November 23, 1942. 26,000 feet above the gray, churning waters of the Bay of Biscay, just off the coast of Saint Nazaire. Frost traces delicate fern-like patterns across the armored glass of the canopy. Inside the cockpit of his Focke-Wulf 190, Oberleutnant Erich Vogel tightens his grip on the control stick. The leather of his gloves creaks, a sound swallowed immediately by the deafening rhythmic roar of the BMW radial engine screaming just feet in front of his knees. The air up here is thin and brutally cold, a freezing void that seeks to seep through the seals of the pressurized cockpit. Vogel scans the horizon, his eyes narrowing behind his goggles. He is not looking for the graceful curves of a Spitfire today. He is hunting giants. To the west they appear. At first, they are nothing more than motes of dust against the blinding white of the cloud deck. But they grow. They solidify into the blocky, silver silhouettes of the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress. To the Luftwaffe pilots of Jagdgeschwader II, these American bombers are slow, lumbering beasts. The mood in the mess hall earlier that morning had been one of confident, almost predatory anticipation. The German pilots, veterans of the Eastern Front and the Channel battles against the Royal Air Force, viewed the Americans as amateurs. They called them cowboys who had wandered into a duel with master swordsmen. Vogel keys his throat microphone. His voice is calm, flattened by the static of the radio transmission. Victor 1 to all flights, Indians at 10 o'clock low, heavy bombers, no escorts. It is a turkey shoot, or so the logic goes. The Americans are flying in daylight, a tactic the British Royal Air Force abandoned years ago as suicide. The Luftwaffe command has assured pilots like Vogel that the B-17 is a flawed design. They claim it lacks the speed to outrun a fighter and the maneuverability to dodge cannon fire. The intelligence reports insist that while the bomber bristles with machine guns, they are manned by inexperienced crews who will scatter at the first sign of a yellow-nosed fighter. Vogel banks his aircraft, the Focke-Wulf responding instantly, rolling onto its wingtip with a predator's grace. Below him, his swarm, a flight of 4 fighters, mimics the move. They drop toward the bomber stream, gathering speed, trading altitude for the kinetic energy they will need to slash through the American formation. As the distance closes, the details of the bombers emerge. They are ugly utilitarian machines, their aluminum skins dull under the winter sun. Vogel picks out a target on the outer edge of the formation, a straggler, the perfect victim. He aligns his Revy gun sight, the glowing reticle settling over the right wing root of the bomber. He expects the bomber to take evasive action, to jink or dive. But the B-17 holds its course. It plods onward, steady as a freight train. Easy prey, Vogel mutters to himself. He closes to 600 yards. This is the killing zone. He places his thumb over the firing button, ready to unleash a stream of 20mm cannon shells that will tear the wing off the American intruder. He anticipates the panic of the enemy crew. He expects sporadic, inaccurate return fire from the single-hand, held guns sticking out of the waist windows. Then, the sky changes. It does not happen as a single event, but as a sudden, violent eruption. The B-17 does not fire a single gun. It fires all of them. And it is not just the bomber Vogel is targeting. The 3 aircraft flying in tight formation beside it also open fire. Tracers, thick and bright as magnesium flares, streak toward Vogel's fighter. They do not come in hesitant bursts. They come in a continuous, overlapping lattice of lead. The air around his cockpit seems to ignite with the passage of hundreds of .50 caliber rounds. These are not the light rifle caliber machine guns used by the British early in the war. These are heavy, thumb-thick projectiles that punch through aluminum and steel with terrifying ease. Vogel gasps, instinctively jerking the stick to the right. A hammer blow strikes his left wing. The aircraft shudders violently. He sees a chunk of his own cowling fly off, spinning away into the slipstream. The amateurs are not scattering. They are boxing him in. The Americans have adopted a formation known as the combat box. It is a geometrical fortress in the sky. By stacking their aircraft at staggered altitudes and flying wingtip to wingtip, the B-17 crews create a defensive sphere where every angle of approach is covered by the guns of multiple aircraft. When Vogel attacks the straggler, he is not fighting one bomber with 10 guns. He is fighting a formation of 6 bombers with 60 guns, all converging on his approach vector. He dives, rolling inverted to escape the torrent of fire. The G-forces slam him into his seat, graying out his vision. He pulls out of the dive 3,000 feet below, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He looks up. The formation drifts on, undisturbed, a relentless armada of silver. Smoke trails from one engine of the bomber he targeted, but it does not fall. It keeps its place in the line, protected by its brothers. Back at the airfield in Vannes, the mood is different as the engines cut out. The laughter that filled the briefing room is gone, replaced by the ticking of cooling metal and the frantic shouts of ground crews. Mechanics swarm over Vogel's plane, tracing the jagged holes punched through the fuselage. One round missed the main fuel tank by inches. Another shattered the radio equipment behind his head. Vogel climbs down from the wing, his legs feeling like rubber. He pulls off his flight helmet, his hair matted with sweat despite the freezing altitude. Another pilot, a young lieutenant named Muller, walks over. Muller's face is pale, his eyes wide. "I could not get close," Muller says, his voice trembling. "Every time I lined up, there were tracers coming from 3 different directions. It was like flying into a wall." Vogel looks at the bullet holes in his own plane, then back at the sky where the drone of the American engines is fading to the east. He lights a cigarette, his hands shaking slightly. He remembers the intelligence briefings, the laughter at the American flying targets. "They lied to us," Vogel says quietly, the smoke snatched away by the wind. "Those are not targets. That is a flying porcupine. And if Berlin does not give us heavier cannons or better armor, those porcupines are going to bleed us dry." Inside the officers' mess that night, the denial begins. The base commander dismisses the reports of overlapping fire as exaggeration, the result of combat nerves. He insists the Americans were merely lucky, that their formation flying is rigid and inflexible. He orders new tactics for the next day. Attack from the rear, close the distance, show more aggression. But Vogel sits in the corner, staring into his glass of schnapps. He knows what he saw. He saw the future of the air war. He saw a mathematical equation written in 50 caliber tracers, and the Luftwaffe was on the wrong side of the calculation. The Wehrmachts, the 4-engine bombers, were not defenseless. They were bringing the front line to the skies of Germany, and they were bringing it with 12 guns per plane. The laughing time was over. The dying time had begun. March 8th, 1943. A muddy airfield on the outskirts of Rennes, France. The wind whips across the wet grass, carrying the sharp, metallic scent of high-octane aviation fuel and the heavy, cloying odor of wet ash. Major Hans Schroeder stands before the twisted, blackened skeleton of a Boeing B-17 flying fortress. This particular beast had been brought down 2 days ago. Not by fighter fire, but by a lucky hit from a heavy flak battery near the coast. It belly landed in a plow field, snapping its back but leaving the fuselage largely intact. Now, it serves as a classroom for the dead. Schroeder kicks a clod of mud off his boot and gestures to the underside of the bomber with a riding crop. Gathered around him are 12 fresh pilots, replacements sent from flight schools in Bavaria. Their faces are smooth, unlined by the stress of combat. They look at the wrecked American machine with curiosity, not fear. To them, it is just a pile of junk aluminum. "Take a look," Schroeder barks, his voice cutting through the wind. He points the crop at a spherical metal housing protruding from the belly of the aircraft. This is the Sperry Ball turret. The young pilots lean in. The turret is small, cramped, and claustrophobic. It looks like a mechanical eye torn from a giant. Inside this ball, Schroeder continues, his tone devoid of emotion, sits a man curled into a fetal position. He has 2 Browning .50 caliber heavy machine guns. He can rotate 360 degrees. He can aim straight down. He can track you as you dive beneath him. Schroeder walks to the rear of the plane, stepping over jagged tears in the aluminum skin. He points to the tail. And here, twin guns. They cover the rear cone. If you approach from the 6 o'clock position, which is exactly what they taught you in flight school, you are flying directly down the throat of 2 machine guns that fire 800 rounds per minute. Each. One of the young pilots raises a hand. "But Herr Major, surely we can attack from the beam? From the side?" The deflection angle makes it hard for them to track us. Schroeder laughs. It is a dry, humorless sound that makes the recruits shift uncomfortably. He points upward to the top of the fuselage behind the cockpit. That is the top turret. Twin 50s, electric power drive. It covers the entire upper hemisphere. And behind the wings, waist gunners on both sides. Gentlemen, you are looking at a machine that has no blind spots. It is a porcupine made of steel. April 17th, 1943. 18,000 feet over the Weser River. The theoretical lesson in the muddy field at Rennes is now a terrified reality for Unteroffizier Karl Braun. This is his 3rd combat sortie. Of the 12 pilots who stood around that wreck in March, 4 are already dead. Braun flies his Messerschmitt 109 as part of a massive interception force. The American 8th Air Force has put up a raid of 115 bombers targeting the Focke-Wulf factory in Bremen. From a distance, the bomber stream looks like a swarm of silver locusts, a dense, miles-long column moving with terrifying slowness across the blue sky. "White 3, tighten up!" The voice of his Staffelkapitän crackles in his earpiece. Braun pushes his throttle forward, the Daimler-Benz engine whining in protest. He is trying to position himself for a beam attack, coming in from the side to slash through the formation. The Luftwaffe command has finally admitted that sitting behind the bombers is suicide, so they are trying to hit them from the flanks. But the Americans have changed the game again. As Braun banks his fighter to begin his run, he sees the geometry of the enemy formation shift. The B-17s are not flying in a straight line. They are stacked in a combat box. A high squadron, a lead squadron, and a low squadron. They are arranged so that the guns of one plane cover the empty space around its neighbor. It is a 3-dimensional kill zone. Braun commits to the dive. He picks a bomber in the low squadron. He screams in at 350 miles per hour, his thumb hovering over the cannon trigger. He expects to face the fire of the single bomber he is attacking. Instead, the sky lights up. It is not just his target that fires. As he crosses the formation's flank, the waist gunners from the high squadron, 2,000 feet above him, pour fire down. The ball turret gunners from the lead squadron track him as he passes underneath. Tracers crisscross in front of his canopy like a laser grid. "Mein Gott!" Brown screams, instinctively flinching as a line of white smoke whips past his right wing. He fires a short burst, the recoil shuddering through his airframe, but his aim is ruined by the sheer volume of incoming metal. He sees sparks dance across the wing of the bomber, but the massive plane shrugs off the 20mm shells. He pulls back on the stick, breaking away in a steep climb, desperate to escape the web of fire. As he climbs, he looks back. A Messerschmitt from another flight attempts the same pass. The fighter is caught in a crossfire between 3 bombers. It does not explode, it simply disintegrates. The right wing shears off. The engine cowling rips away, and the fuselage tumbles into a flat spin, trailing black, oily smoke. The pilot never had a chance to bail out. The American formation does not waver. When a bomber is hit and drops out of the formation, the other planes slide over to fill the gap, closing the defensive box. It is a self-healing organism. Back at the base, the debriefing is chaotic. The pilots are exhausted, their faces smeared with oil and sweat. The room is filled with the smoke of cheap cigarettes and the murmur of angry, frightened voices. "We cannot get close," a veteran pilot shouts, slamming his fist onto the wooden table. "The crossfire is too heavy. If you attack 1, you fight 6. If you attack 6, you fight 20. We are throwing pebbles at a stone wall." Schroeder, the major who had given the briefing in the mud, stands at the front of the room. He looks tired. He knows the pilots are right. The Luftwaffe is losing fighters faster than German factories can build them. The standard tactics of the dogfight, the graceful turns, the stalking from the rear, are useless against the brute force of massed heavy machine guns. He looks at the chalkboard behind him. It is covered in diagrams of the B-17 formation. Arrows drawn in white chalk show approach vectors from the rear, from the side, from below. Every single arrow terminates in a frantic scribble of X marks, representing the bomber's defensive fire. There is only one direction where the X marks are thinner. Only one angle where the B-17 is vulnerable, where the overlapping fields of fire are weakest, and where the closure rate is so high that the American gunners might not have time to track a fast-moving fighter. Schroeder picks up the chalk. He draws a straight line directly into the nose of the lead bomber. "There is only one way left," Schroeder says quietly, the room falling silent. "We must attack them head-on. 12 o'clock a level, straight into the cockpit glass." A murmur of disbelief ripples through the room. To fly head-on at a closing speed of 600 miles per hour requires nerves of steel and a disregard for survival that borders on madness. It is a game of chicken played with 4 engine monsters. "It is the only way," Schroeder repeats, turning to face his men. "We have to hit them in the face before they can hit us." August 17th, 1943, 25,000 feet above the Rhineland. The air inside the cockpit of Oberleutnant Erich Vogel's Focke-Wulf 190 is thick with tension, a sharp contrast to the freezing vacuum just beyond the plexiglass. Today, the tactic changes. Today, they stop chasing the tail of the dragon and start striking at its eyes. Vogel leads his squadron, climbing hard to get ahead of the American bomber stream. The radar controllers on the ground have done their job perfectly, positioning the German fighters 10 miles in front of the approaching armada. Below them, the Rhine River is a twisting silver ribbon, but no one is looking at the scenery. "Stoffel, listen to me," Vogel says, his voice tight but controlled. "We turn 180 degrees on my mark. Line abreast, spacing 200 feet. Do not fire until you see the rivets on their noses. Aim for the cockpit, kill the pilots, and the beast dies." It is a suicidal command, or at least it feels like one. To fly directly into the path of a formation of 4-engine heavy bombers requires the suppression of every survival instinct a human being possesses. Execute, Vogel commands. The 12 fighters bank sharply to the left, their wings cutting through the thin air. As they roll out of the turn, the horizon fills with a terrifying sight. The American formation, Combat Wing 16, is a wall of aluminum moving relentlessly toward them. The closing speed is mind-bending. The bombers are moving at 200 miles per hour. The fighters are charging at 350. That is a closure rate of nearly 600 miles per hour. The distance between hunter and prey evaporates not in minutes, but in heartbeats. Vogel selects the lead bomber of the high squadron. It is a B-17F model. Crucially, intelligence has confirmed that this model is weak in the nose. It has only a single hand-operated .30 caliber machine gun mounted in the plexiglass nose cone, and cheek guns that have limited traverse. Compared to the bristling death trap of the tail and waist, the nose is a naked soft spot. Here they come, Vogel whispers. The bomber grows in his windshield with nightmarish speed. At 2 miles out, it is a dot. At 1 mile, it is a shape. At 800 yards, it is a monster. The psychological pressure is immense. Vogel is playing a game of chicken with a 30-ton machine. If he holds his course too long, he will collide with the bomber, vaporizing both aircraft instantly. If he breaks away too soon, his shots will miss, and he will expose his belly to the ball turret gunners as he passes underneath. 600 yards. Vogel squeezes the trigger. His 4 20mm cannons and 2 machine guns erupt. The recoil slows his plane perceptibly, shaking the airframe like a wet dog. Bright flashes sparkle across the nose of the B-17. He sees pieces of the plexiglass nose, cone shatter and fly off into the slipstream. 400 yards. He adjusts his aim slightly higher, walking the tracers into the flight deck. He can see the white stars on the wings now. He can see the propellers churning. He imagines the terror of the American pilots, seeing a radial engine fighter screaming straight at their faces, spitting fire. 200 yards. Brake! Vogel screams. He slams the stick forward and to the right. The gray belly of the B-17 flashes overhead with a deafening whoosh, so close that the turbulence throws his fighter sideways. The shadow of the giant wing momentarily blacks out the sun. He pulls hard on the stick, gasping as the G-forces crush him into his seat. He climbs back up, craning his neck to see the result of his run. The lead bomber is in agony. Smoke pours from the No. 2 engine, and the nose is a shattered ruin. The aircraft pitches up violently, the pilot likely dead or incapacitated, his hands frozen on the yoke in a death grip. The bomber stalls, hangs in the air for a sickening second, and then rolls over on its back. It plummets out of the formation, trailing a long ribbon of fire. "I got him!" A voice crackles over the radio. It is Muller, the young pilot who had been so terrified months ago. "I hit the flight deck. He's going down." For the first time in months, the Luftwaffe pilots are not just surviving, they are winning. The head-on attack works. The American formation, so impenetrable from the rear, is brittle from the front. The bombers cannot bring enough guns to bear to stop the swarm of fighters charging their nose. The rigid formation that protects them from flank attacks makes them unable to dodge the head-on assault. Throughout the fall of 1943, this scene repeats itself over Germany. The 12 o'clock high attack becomes the standard doctrine. The Luftwaffe tears into the bomber streams, inflicting horrific losses. The Schweinfurt raid becomes a graveyard for the Americans. The Regensburg raid is a massacre. Back at the base that evening, the atmosphere is electric. The pilots drink beer with shaking hands, reenacting their passes with swooping gestures. They have found the Achilles heel of the flying fortress. They talk of the look of the bombers growing in their sights, the shattering glass, the collapsing formations. But Vogel does not celebrate. He sits outside the hangar, watching the mechanics patch the bullet holes in his wings. Even in a head-on attack, the danger is real. 2 of his flight did not return today. One misjudged the closure rate and collided with a bomber's wing. The other was caught by a lucky burst from a top turret gunner as he broke away. Vogel knows that war is a pendulum. When one side finds an advantage, the other side adapts. The Americans are not stupid. They have unlimited industrial capacity and engineers who work night and day to keep their crews alive. He runs his hand over the leading edge of his wing. He knows that somewhere in a factory in Seattle or California, men are looking at the same diagrams Major Schroeder drew on the chalkboard. They are looking at the lack of forward firepower, and they are welding something new onto the front of those bombers. "Enjoy the victory tonight, boys," Vogel murmurs to the empty airfield. "Because they are going to close the door, and when they do, there will be no way in." His prediction is more accurate than he realizes. Across the ocean, the B-17 G model is rolling off the assembly line. And hanging under its chin, replacing the simple handheld gun, is a remote-controlled Bendix turret housing 2 50 caliber machine guns. The era of the vulnerable nose is about to end, and the Luftwaffe is about to face a fortress that truly has no weak side. February 20th, 1944. 24,000 feet above the dense forests of central Germany. The winter sun is blinding, reflecting off the snow-covered canopy of the clouds below. Oberleutnant Erich Vogel checks his oxygen gauge. The needle is steady, but his breath comes in short, sharp rasps. It is the first day of what history will later call Big Week, a massive, concentrated assault by the American Air Forces intended to smash the German aircraft industry. Vogel is tired. The circles under his eyes are dark bruises, a testament to weeks of sleepless nights and relentless sorties. The Luftwaffe is being stretched to its breaking point. But today, he feels a grim sense of purpose. The radar controllers report a massive stream of bombers heading for the aircraft factories at Leipzig. Same tactic as before. Vogel calls to his flight. Head-on pass, smash the flight deck, break low. He feels the familiar adrenaline surge as he spots the enemy. It is a column of bombers stretching back as far as the eye can see. To the untrained eye, they look identical to the machines he slaughtered in 1943. They are silver, 4-engined giants. But as Vogel banks his Focke-Wulf 190 around to position himself for the 12 o'clock attack, he is unaware that the silhouette has changed. He lines up on the lead bomber. The closure rate is the usual 600 miles per hour. He prepares himself for the mental strain, the urge to flinch. He expects the nose of the bomber to be silent, a glass cage housing a terrified bombardier and a single, ineffective gun. He is wrong. At 800 yards, a distance that was previously safe from forward fire, the nose of the B-17 lights up. Vogel blinks, his brain struggling to process the visual data. 2 distinct streams of heavy tracers are erupting from directly under the nose of the bomber. They are not the sporadic, wavering fire of a handheld gun. This is precise, mechanical, heavy fire. The American engineers have installed the Bendix Chin Turret. It is a remotely operated housing containing 2 50 caliber machine guns, controlled by the bombardier inside the nose using a joystick and a reflector sight. It can traverse rapidly and spit out 1,600 rounds per minute directly into the path of an attacking fighter. They are firing from the nose, screams a pilot in Vogel's flight. Heavy fire! Brake! Brake! But it is too late to brake. The geometry of the head-on attack relies on the fighter pilot holding his nerve until the last second. If he brakes early, he presents the largest possible target profile to the bomber's forward guns. Vogel watches in horror as the fighter to his left flies directly into a wall of lead. The Chin Turret round saw through the Focke-Wulf's engine block. The fighter explodes instantly, a blossoming flower of orange flame and black oil that Vogel flies through a split second. Later, debris clatters against his windshield. He slams his thumb on the firing button, sending cannon shells toward the bomber. But his aim is shaken. The psychological advantage is gone. The Americans are not just taking the punishment, they are dishing it out. The B-17G model has turned the only safe approach vector into a death trap. Vogel yanks the stick back, climbing vertically to escape the murderous fire from the Chin Turret. His heart is pounding against his ribs. The blind spot is gone. The fortress is now sealed tight. But as he crests the top of his loop, looking for a way to re-engage, a new sound cuts through the roar of his engine. It is a high-pitched whistle, distinct from the rumble of the bombers. He looks up and sees a shape that freezes his blood. Silver, slim, a teardrop canopy, the intake scoop under the belly. Mustangs, he whispers. For 2 years, the Luftwaffe had a golden rule. American fighters could not reach Germany. The fuel tanks were too small. The Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs only had to wait until the Thunderbolts and Spitfires turned back at the border, leaving the bombers naked. But the North American P-51 Mustang has changed the laws of physics. With drop tanks and a Packard Merlin engine, it can fly from England to Berlin and back. Vogel does not have time to issue a warning. The Mustangs drop on them like hawks. They are not tethered to the bombers. They are free hunting. They dive with a speed that makes the Focke-Wulf feel sluggish. A Mustang latches onto the tail of Mueller, the young ace who had survived the head-on attacks of 1943. Mueller brakes hard right, rolling and diving, using every trick the veterans taught him. But the Mustang stays with him, mimicking every move with fluid ease. A short burst of .50 caliber fire shreds Mueller's elevator. His plane pitches down violently and disappears into the cloud deck. Vogel finds himself in a desperate turning fight with another Mustang. He pulls tight, the G-forces graying his vision, the stall warning buzzer screaming in his ear. He is a good pilot, an experte with 20 kills. But he is fighting a machine that is superior at high altitude, flown by a pilot who is fresh, well-fed, and aggressive. He manages to execute a snap roll, forcing the Mustang to overshoot. As the silver fighter flashes past, Vogel sees the pilot clearly. The American is wearing sunglasses. He looks calm. Vogel dives away, pushing his engine past its red line to reach the safety of the lower atmosphere flak belt. He is running. The hunter has become the fox. When he lands, the airfield is a scene of devastation, not from bombs, but from the absence of men. The mess hall is half empty. The laughter is a distant memory. The pilots sit in silence, staring at their plates. They know what happened today. The equation has shifted again, and this time, the result is catastrophic. Major Schroeder enters the room. He does not have a chalkboard or a new tactic. He looks like a man who has seen a ghost. "Report," he says, his voice hollow. "The nose is armored," Vogel says, not looking up. "They have a turret under the chin, twin 50s. We cannot go head-on. It is suicide." "And the fighters?" Schroeder asks. "They are everywhere," Vogel replies. "They chased us down to the deck. We cannot get to the bombers. If we ignore the fighters, They shoot us down. If we fight the fighters, the bombers destroy the factories. Schroeder nods slowly. He knows the strategic reality. The Luftwaffe is being forced into a war of attrition it cannot win. They are trading irreplaceable pilots and aircraft for replaceable bombers. The Americans can build a new B-17 in an hour. It takes 20 years to grow a German pilot like Vogel. We fly again tomorrow, Schroeder says, turning to leave. Berlin. The word hangs in the air like a sentence. Berlin, the heart of the Reich. If the Mustangs can reach Berlin, the war in the air is effectively over. The roof has been blown off the fortress of Europe. Vogel pushes his plate away. He is not hungry. He reaches into his flight jacket and pulls out a letter he began writing 3 days ago. It is to his mother. He stares at the paper, wondering if he should finish it. Outside, the air raid sirens begin to wail. The night bombers are coming. The relentless pounding never stops. Day and night. Fire and ice. Vogel caps his pen. There is no point in finishing the letter. He knows, with a cold, mathematical certainty, that the odds have finally run out. The laughing pilots of 1942 are gone. All that is left are the ghosts, and the few who are waiting to join them. July 7th, 1944. 28,000 feet above Oschersleben, Germany. The war has evolved into a grotesque industrial grinder. The elegance of the 1942 dogfight is dead. In its place is a tactic born of pure desperation. Oberleutnant Erich Vogel sits strapped into a machine that feels less like an aircraft, more like a flying anvil. He is piloting the Focke-Wulf 190A8/R2. The crews call it the Sturmbock, the Battering Ram. Gone is the agility that Vogel once loved. His fighter is laden with hundreds of pounds of extra steel plating bolted to the sides of the fuselage. The canopy glass is not the thin plexiglass of before. It is 30 millimeters of armored quartz, thick enough to stop a 50 caliber bullet at close range. On his outer wings, the 20 millimeter cannons have been replaced by the Mk-108, a 30 millimeter heavy cannon that fires a high explosive mine shell the size of a soup can. Vogel struggles to keep the heavy fighter in formation. The handling is sluggish, the controls unresponsive. He is leading a Sturmgruppe, a storm group of 30 heavily armored fighters. Their orders are terrifyingly simple. Ignore the American fighter escorts. Fly in a tight wedge formation directly into the rear of the bomber stream. Do not fire until you are within 200 yards. Do not break away until the bomber is destroyed. If your guns jam, you ram. Top cover, stay close. Vogel mutters into his mask. Above him, a squadron of light Messerschmitt 109s buzzes nervously. Their job is to keep the American P-51 Mustangs off the backs of Vogel's heavy fighters. If the Messerschmitts fail, the Sturmbocks are nothing more than armored targets. Too heavy to turn, too slow to run. Contact, 12 o'clock, the controller announces. The American formation is a sprawling city in the sky. Over 1,000 B-17 flying fortresses and B-24 Liberators are blotting out the sun. The scale of the invasion is suffocating. Hooks down, Vogel commands. He advances the throttle. The BMW engine roars, dragging the heavy airframe forward. The 30 Sturmbocks align in a line, abreast formation, wingtip to wingtip. They look like a medieval shield wall charging across a field. They approach the rear of the bomber formation. This is the area of maximum defensive firepower, the tail gunners, the ball turrets, the waist gunners. Hundreds of heavy machine guns swivel toward the German line. At 1,000 yards, the Americans open fire. The sky fills with tracers. Usually a pilot would jink, weave, and roll to avoid the stream. But the Sturmbock pilots do not move. They are forbidden to evade. They rely on the armor. Thud, thud, thud. Vogel flinches as 50 caliber rounds slam into his engine, cowling in armored glass. The sound is like a sledgehammer striking an oil drum. A spiderweb crack appears in the corner of his reinforced windshield. But the glass holds. The extra steel plating absorbs the punishment that would have shredded a standard fighter in 1942. "Hold formation," Vogel screams. "Wait for it." 600 yards. The volume of fire is deafening. The air is thick with smoke and turbulence. To his right, a Focke-Wulf takes a direct hit to the oil cooler. It erupts in flames, but the pilot keeps coming for another 3 seconds before sliding out of formation. 400 yards. The B-17 ahead of Vogel fills his entire vision. He can see the tail gunner firing desperately. 200 yards. Fire! Vogel squeezes the trigger. The recoil of the 30mm cannons is massive. It slows the plane in midair. Boom, boom, boom. These are not machine gun bullets. They are mine shells. He only needs 3 hits. The first shell strikes the right wing root of the B-17. There is a blinding flash, and a 6-foot section of the wing simply vanishes. The second shell hits the fuselage behind the waist window. The bomber does not smoke. It breaks apart. The tail section shears off completely, tumbling away. The main fuselage rears up, venting fuel and flames. Vogel pulls up violently, barely missing the debris of the dying giant. Around him, the sky is filled with the carnage of the bomber stream. 6, 7, 10 bombers are falling in flames within seconds. The Sturmbock tactic works. It is brutal, ugly, and effective. "We are slaughtering them," a young voice cries out over the radio. But the victory lasts exactly 30 seconds. "Mustangs, 6 o'clock high. They broke through." The warning from the top cover comes too late. The Messerschmitts above have been swept aside by a swarm of American P-51s. Now, the Mustangs dive on the heavy, slow Sturmbocks, who have lost all their energy in the attack. Vogel looks back to see the silver predators diving. He pushes his throttle to the firewall, but the heavy armor plates weigh him down. He cannot turn. He cannot dive. He is a sitting duck. He sees the fighter to his left explode as 6 50 caliber machine guns saw through its cockpit. The armor that protected them from the bombers is useless against a fighter that can fly circles around them and hit them from the unarmored top or bottom. "Break! Scatter!" Vogel yells. But there is nowhere to go. A Mustang slashes past him, tracers zipping inches from his canopy. Vogel kicks the rudder, forcing his lumbering plane into a skid. He feels bullets hammer into his fuselage, tearing through the aluminum skin behind the armor plate. His engine sputters, coughing black smoke. He dives toward the cloud layer below, the only refuge left. As he falls, he sees the slaughter continues above. The Sturmbocks took down 15 bombers, but the Mustangs are annihilating the Sturmbocks. It is a mathematical exchange that Germany cannot sustain. For every Yost bomber destroyed, a German pilot dies. And there are thousands more bombers coming tomorrow. Vogel punches through the clouds, the gray mist hiding him from the hunters above. His engine is vibrating violently. He is losing altitude. He checks his map. He is miles from base. He unclips his oxygen mask, wiping blood from his nose. The vibration has loosened a tooth. He spits it into his hand. The Luftwaffe has tried everything. They laughed. Then they realized. Then they attacked the nose. Then they built flying tanks. And still, the aluminum river flows. The B-17s are endless. The Mustangs are endless. Vogel looks at the red warning light on his dashboard. The oil pressure is 0. He has to bail out. As he slides the canopy back, preparing to jump into the freezing air, he realizes the ultimate irony. The armor they bolted on to save them has made them too heavy to survive. They have armored themselves into a coffin. March 18, 1945. Akmer Airfield, northern Germany. The sound is unlike anything that has ever been heard in the history of warfare. It is not the rhythmic chug of a piston engine nor the roar of a propeller. It is a high-pitched shriek, a banshee wail that vibrates in the chest cavities of the ground crew. Major Erich Vogel sits in the cockpit of the Messerschmitt Me 262 Schwalbe. He is a ghost of the man he was in 1942. His left leg is stiff from the bailout injury in July. His face is scarred from frostbite. He commands a wing of ghosts, a collection of the Luftwaffe's surviving aces, gathered here to fly the miracle weapon. This aircraft has no propeller. Under each swept-back wing hangs a Jumo 004 turbojet engine. It burns kerosene, not gasoline. It smells of paraffin and burnt metal. "Turbines running," Vogel says. His voice is flat. Hope is a dangerous luxury he discarded months ago. He taxis out. The runway is pockmarked with bomb craters that have been hastily filled with gravel. The Americans are everywhere now. They bomb the factories by day and the cities by night. He pushes the throttles forward. The acceleration is slow at first, terrifyingly sluggish. But once the airflow catches the turbine blades, the machine transforms. He lifts off, the ground blurring away faster than he can comprehend. He is flying at 540 miles per hour. Vector 360, heavy bomber stream, Berlin sector. The controller cracks. The voice is young, perhaps a teenager. The old controllers are all gone. Vogel climbs. In the piston fighters, this climb took 20 minutes. In the jet, he punches through the cloud deck in minutes. He levels off at 30,000 feet. Below him, the sight is biblical. The American bomber stream is not a formation anymore. It is a landscape. A column of B-17 flying fortresses and B-24 Liberators stretches for 60 miles. 2,000 heavy bombers. 1,000 fighter escorts. It is a steel river flowing into the heart of Germany to drown it. "Attack speed!" Vogel orders his flight of 6 jets. They dive. The speed builds. 550, 580, 600. The airframe hums. At this speed, the B-17 gunners are helpless. The electric turrets that Vogel learned to fear, the chin turrets, the ball turrets, cannot traverse fast enough to track a jet moving this fast. The porcupine is finally too slow. Vogel screams through the bomber formation. He does not need to lead his aim. He simply points the nose and fires his 430mm cannons. Rip, rip, rip. He tears the wing off a B-17 in the lead squadron. He flashes past the bombers so fast that the image is a blur of silver and fire. He is untouchable. He pulls up in a vertical climb that no Mustang can match, soaring back into the safety of the sun. "I got one," a pilot yells. They are standing still. They cannot touch us. For a fleeting moment, the old feeling returns. The feeling of the hunter. The feeling of superiority. The technology works. The jet is the answer. But then, Vogel looks down at his fuel gauge. The Jumo engines are thirsty beasts. He has 10 minutes of fuel left. He has shot down 1 bomber. 1. He looks at the stream. There are 1,999 left. The futility hits him harder than a bullet. The Luftwaffe has finally built the perfect Predator, but they have built it 3 years too late. The Americans are not winning because they have better planes. They are winning because they have more. They have built so many B-17s that they have simply saturated the sky. The defensive fire that shredded the Luftwaffe in 1943 bought the Americans time. Time to build this armada. Time to train the escorts. Time to grind the German pilot corps into dust. Returning to base, Vogel says, the excitement draining away instantly. Fuel low. The danger is not in the air anymore. It is on the ground. As Vogel lowers his landing gear, vulnerable and slow on approach, he sees them. Mustangs. They are circling the airfield like sharks. They know the jets have short legs. They know they have to land. The Americans have learned to ignore the jets in the air and simply kill them when they return to the nest. Rat trap, Vogel screams. Abort landing. Go around. But his wingman has no fuel to go around. The Me-262 touches down, and immediately, 3 Mustangs dive from the clouds, 50 caliber guns blazing. The jet explodes on the runway, a fireball of kerosene rolling across the tarmac. Vogel jams his throttles forward, his engine screaming as he tries to claw back into the air on fumes. But the Mustangs are on him. Tracers whip past his canopy. He is low, slow, and out of options. He looks to his left. A silver Mustang pulls alongside him, matching his speed. The American pilot looks over. He does not shoot. He simply watches. He knows Vogel is out of fuel. He knows the war is over. Vogel's engine sputters. Flame out. Silence. The heavy jet dips its nose. The trees of the Black Forest rush up to meet him. Vogel does not try to bail out this time. He is too low. He is too tired. As the ground rushes up, he thinks back to that day in November 1942. The laughter in the mess hall. The joke about the American cowboys and their clumsy bombers. They had laughed at the turrets. They had laughed at the formation flying. They had laughed at the idea of daylight bombing. And while they laughed, the Americans had built a machine that could not be stopped. They had built a meat grinder in the sky, and the Luftwaffe had willingly fed itself into the gears, one squadron at a time. The B-17s drone on overhead, a low, earth-shaking rumble that does not stop, not for the jets, not for the flak, not for the death of Erich Vogel. They are indifferent. They are inevitable. The screen goes black. The rumble of the engines continues for 10 seconds, then fades into silence.